Hello and welcome to Owning the Narrative. I am Bulow. The show will feature the top news of the week, complete with my observations, and even a little bit of sarcasm thrown in. The top news stories will be taken from my morning news briefings that I write on the Rick Bulow New Media blog every weekday morning. If you go on to like what you see, smash that thumbs up button. And now, let's go right into the news. The polls say that Donald Trump is going to lose this election in November. But is that really true? Now what Kurt Schlichter from townhall.com had written, let's go right to that article. It's entitled "The Tide Turns Again Toward Trump." Remember how Donald Trump was badly doomed a couple weeks ago? Grandpa Badfinger was riding high down in his basement, and the GOP was going to be destroyed in November. All the smart people of smartness who make up little blue check marks on Twitter tweeted it, so it had to be true. Good times. But then last week it all changed, turning 180 on a dime as Biden stomped on his Pelosi. It looked good for Trump and the Republicans again. And while there will be twists and turns, and while we best not get cocky, the victory most of us patriots expect is coming clearly into focus as Biden becomes clearly more unfocused. The polls have improved not just for Trump, but for the Republicans running down ticket too. Not that we should put any great store in the polls. Keep in mind that the polls were literally the only indicator showing Biden and the Dems were winning. There is no other manifestation of a blue wave out there. Do you see any Biden signs? There's just one in my neighborhood, which is all LA's suburban woke wine women, and that's in a creepy house that the children fear. No, there are no Trump signs either, but then that would invite a hassle. A Biden billboard will presumably invite hosannas for brokenness, and yet only a single stranger has won, and that's the guy we all suspect is eating the cats that go missing. The polls we were informed indicate Trump's doom. Of course, you could have said that in 2016 too, and then just ask President Felonia Milhouse von Pantsuit about how that went if you can catch her between goblets of Screw-Top Trader Joe's Chardonnay. You hear from such unimpeachable sources as Human Potato employing CNN that Trump is down 15 points, and you wonder where all those people who switched from voting patriot to voting squad minion are. I have yet to meet one. In all my shameless virtual book promoting around the country over the last month, I've interacted with a lot of folks, and I have met many people who were all, yeah, I did not vote for him last time because Trump's tweet make me sad, but I'm kind of soft, so I can vote for the communist Trojan donkey. In contrast, the number of people I have met who told me, yeah, I voted for Trump and love his conservative achievements, but he's mean to dumb people on Twitter, so I have to vote for Charlie Young McCarthyite, is zero as in zip, nada. The number of conservative successes achieved by the insufferable never Trump pedocons in the 2 decades before Trump came along and broke and humiliated them, none. Where are all these vote switchers? And where were all the conservatives picking up their phone during dinner and saying, why yes, I'm delighted to talk to you as my ribeye chills, total stranger. And yes, I strongly support the guy the cultural elite considers to be literally Hitler. We talk about the silent majority and the shy Trump voter, but it's more like the kiss my Schumer, you'll find out what I think in November jerk voter. But it's not just the few of us answer polls. It's that there's no reason to believe that the polls are not rigged. Now, am I contending that the polls are consciously manipulated by media outlets and others to artificially depress Trump's popularity in order to demoralize conservatives and keep them from voting since it's a lost cause? Yes. The media lies about things right in front of us. Peaceful protesters, anyone? So what's stopping them from lying about things that are already opaque, like poll results? Oh well, we'll gladly invent a Russian conspiracy theory out of whole cloth and cheerlead people being imprisoned and an election being overturned, so our powerful allies can retake power, but we draw the line at tweaking poll numbers. I've got my principles, dagnabbit. Except now even the polls are tightening, which seems likely to be the pollsters are trying to close it up a little so they don't look amazingly stupid again when Trump romps to a quote-unquote upset victory. Besides polls, nothing foretells a Democrat win. Nothing. There is no data point that helps them. The rusty crustacean spent last week uttering gaffe after gaffe, "Are you a junkie?" and dwelling in his dungeon. He won't go to his own convention. He almost certainly won't debate. And he won't suddenly turn into the smooth, coherent, intellectual force that he used to be way back. Never. There's an enthusiasm gap that's even wider than the yawning chasm between Bill Kristol's self-image and the cheesy reality. Trump voters are going to crawl over broken glass to vote for the Donald. Say Dems are looking for broken glass to slash their wrists because they know their addled nominee is a senile old weirdo on an expressway into McGovernville. Who exactly are the people saying? I'm really excited about the dynamic possibilities of a Joe Biden presidency, except the marketing guys that ensure independence. And who exactly is jazzed by the very limited range of reap options his handlers have given themselves thanks to their race, gender, and weakness requirements? Kamala Harris, with her grasping ambition and grading style is both toxic. Susan Rice will have a Libya problem with both liberals and conservatives, and Stacey Abrams will have to resign the governorship of Georgia. She's not getting picked, and will have to make do with being appointed the ambassador to diabetes. Look at the positions Biden and the rest of the Dems are locked in by people like AOC and that other commie who probably married her brother. Trump is opening up the economy and schools. The Dems are for permanent mouth-thongs, and it's also clear that the people standing in the way of extended unemployment benefits to Pelosi and Schumer, who won't help normal Americans unless we agree to bail out the blue state public employee pensions and make sacrifices to that weird Swedish weather goddess. On China and freeloading NATO bums, Trump is hard and Biden is soft. Ditto on those peaceful protesters setting fires and attacking cops, and on illegal aliens, and on non-tech rubber barons, and on Big Pharma. The Dems wanting to defund the police, reimagine the police. But voters don't have to imagine the resulting rising crime rates because it's already happening. One of the reasons Bill Clinton was successful in the 90s is that he got rid of the ridiculous thug hugging of 60s liberalism, making it safe for voters to elect Dems again. That lesson has been forgotten. Only within the modern liberal bubble could these idiots talk themselves into believing that there is too little crime and we're too hard on criminals is a great message. What do the American people think? They think lock and load. There's also the nuts and bolts of the campaign. It's getting better. The Trump team has moved Brad Parscale to digital, a job he excels in. After conservatives complained, it revamped its text outreach and it set a record for fundraising. Other GOP entities like the NRCC are still failing. It's out registering the Dems, knocking on millions of doors while the Dems are cowering from the flu, and readily minorities are refusing to simply line up and vote Democrat. Many are walking away and moving to Trump despite Biden's bizarre contentions regarding how black voters should be monolithically Democrat, or they apparently stopped being black or something. Trump's taking the lead again. That's why you see a doubling down on Democrat attempts to set up the chance to win by fraud, and if they can't pull that off, declare his re-election victory illegitimate. You can smell their fear over the musky odor of Biden's Old Spice. The win is not a done deal. We just need to play out the rest of the election like we're behind, but we know that we aren't. Now, interestingly enough, I did not vote for Donald Trump in 2016 because I thought that he was just like Hillary. However, his policies have changed me. I mean, I'm just looking around, and granted, we are in a pandemic, but look at what happened before the pandemic. Stock market rise. Stock market set record highs. Unemployment hits record lows. You know, America is being respected all over the world. I mean, it's those little things. I think James Carville had it correctly when he put out the slogan that made Bill Clinton president. Is the economy stupid? That's what is swaying me to vote for Donald Trump in 2020. That's what caused me to, you know, that is what caused me to earn his, that's what caused him to earn my vote. And that is all I have to say for the moment. I will be back with a new article soon. With 6 days until the Democrat National Convention and 13 days until the Republican National Convention, things are really shaping up. In fact, we have Trump narrowing his acceptance speech to 2 locations. This from the Conservative Daily News and Andrew Trunsky. President Donald Trump, in a tweet Monday, said he would accept his party's presidential nomination at either the White House or in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Trump originally floated the White House as the location for accepting the Republican nomination location on Fox and Friends Wednesday. We have narrowed the presidential nomination acceptance speech to be delivered on the final night of the convention to 2 locations, the Great Battlefield of Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and the White House, Washington, D.C. We will announce the decision soon. Trump said he would announce the location of the acceptance speech soon. The speech is scheduled to take place on the final night of the convention, August 27. The announcement comes after several months of confusion surrounding the Republican National Convention due to the coronavirus pandemic. The GOP moved convention out of Charlotte, North Carolina, after Democrat Governor Roy Cooper said he would not allow the event to occur without proper social distancing guidelines in place. The convention relocated to Jacksonville, Florida, only for the event to be scaled back and then canceled in July. Even with the convention's cancellation, Trump had still planned on accepting the Republican nomination in Charlotte, the Charlotte Observer reported. The Democrat National Convention Committee has had to make several changes to its plans. Party officials canceled most in-person events, originally scheduled to take place in Milwaukee. Leadership means being able to adapt to any situation. That's what we've done with our convention, the DNC chair Tom Perez said in a statement in late June. The Republican National Convention is scheduled for August 24 through 27, and the Democrat National Convention is scheduled to run from August 17 to 20. Now, what's interesting about this is that both conventions, okay, we know that Trump is going to be at either the White House or in Gettysburg for his acceptance speech. We've yet to see we've yet to hear rather, where Biden's scheduled to make his acceptance speech from. And up until yesterday, we didn't even know who Biden's running mate was going to be. But now, breaking news, we do. This coming from the USA Today. That's the ticket. Joe Biden picks Senator Kamala Harris as his 2020 vice presidential running mate. Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden has announced California Senator Kamala Harris as his vice presidential running mate for the 2020 election, making her the first Black woman and first Asian American person on a major party's presidential ticket. Harris, who early on was a Biden opponent for the nomination, brings the political prowess of winning stateside election in the largest state, while also personifying the diversity that key Democratic activists have said is crucial to building grassroots enthusiasm for the ticket. I have the great honor to announce that I picked Kamala Harris, a fearless fighter for the little guy, and one of the country's finest public servants, as my running mate Biden tweeted. Amid nationwide protests for racial justice and a reform of policing, Harris served 5 years as Attorney General in California and as a prosecutor in San Francisco. In the Senate, Harris boasted her reputation as a shrewd debater and questioner of administration officials such as Attorney General William Barr. But during a 2019 Democrat debate, when Harris was still running for the nomination, she challenged Biden about working with segregationist senators. Harris described herself as part of the second class to integrate her school as a child after mandatory school busing, which forced Biden to apologize for his earlier comments. Harris sent in her own presidential bid in December 2019. Biden said, "Of course he would consider Harris as a running mate. Senator Harris has the capacity to be anything she wants to be. I mean it sincerely," Biden said in November, shortly after Harris dropped out of the primary. "She is solid. She can be president someday herself. She can be the vice president. She can go on to be a Supreme Court justice. She can be an attorney general. I mean, she has enormous capability." At a July 28 press conference, Biden held an archive full of points to make about Harris, such as talented and a great help to campaign after reports of friction between the two. But he wasn't asked about her. "Do not hold grudges," the card said. Harris was elected to the Senate in 2016 and assumed office in January 2017. Before being elected to the Senate, Harris was California's first female attorney general. Before that, she was district attorney of San Francisco. Ahead of announcing her presidential bid, Harris drew the spotlight during the 2018 Supreme Court confirmation hearing for Brett Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh was accused of sexual misconduct by California professor Christine Blasey Ford, and first they denied the nominations. Both Kavanaugh and Ford testified before Congress about the alleged incident that Ford said happened when they were both in high school. Harris assured Ford she wasn't on trial during the intense questioning. Harris's history as a prosecutor made for a viral video of her questioning Kavanaugh. Over the past several months, Harris supported Biden, and he did nothing to discourage speculation about her winning the ticket. She participated during July in virtual roundtables with North Carolina officials discussing Biden's economic recovery proposal to help caregivers, and with Minnesota officials chatting about his infrastructure plans. Harris joined the candidate's wife Jill in June to discuss health care with Wisconsin officials. In early March, Harris endorsed Biden before Super Tuesday when he won 10 out of the 14 contests. "I have decided that I am, with great enthusiasm, going to endorse Joe Biden for President of the United States," Harris said in a video statement. "I believe in Joe, I really believe in him, and I have known him for a long time." Biden didn't squelch speculation that Harris could end up on the Democrat ticket. "I'm so lucky to have you to be part of this partnership going forward. Working together, we can make a great deal of progress," he told Harris at a virtual fundraiser in April. After she introduced him, "I'm coming for you, kid." Harris in May emerged as an early favorite among Biden aides, top donors, and surrogates, according to a report from Politico. South Carolina Democrat Bakari Sellers, who was a top surrogate for Harris, told Politico that Harris deserves to be chosen. He added that, "A lot of people are pushing for her. She has a lot of support." Now, this should prove to be very interesting because, okay, we already know that Trump is going to have Pence as his running mate, and so it'll be interesting to see just what a debate, if any, between Harris and Pence is going to be. Just like it'll be interesting to find out just what, again, if any, debate Biden and Trump are going to have. The debates are scheduled to be in late April, in late late September all the way through late October. However, with this pandemic, who knows what's going to happen? So I am definitely intrigued as to what Harris is going to say at next week's Democrat convention, and it'll be interesting to find out also where she is going to accept the nomination, whether it'll be in Milwaukee or in California or wherever. As I reported yesterday, Joe Biden had picked Senator Kamala Harris from California as his vice presidential running mate for the November election. And already we see Vice President Pence saying that he looks forward to debating her in Salt Lake City on October 7th. This coming from the Washington Examiner. It says, Pence says he's looking forward to debating Kamala Harris in fall. This by Mika Solner, the breaking news reporter. Vice President Mike Pence says he's looking forward to debating Senator Kamala Harris after she was announced as presumptive Democratic presidential nominee of Joe Biden's running mate on Tuesday. Pence congratulated Harris and said he will see her at the vice presidential debate in Salt Lake City on October 7. He also made a few critiques about his opponent, but said Biden's pick didn't come as a shock. As you all know, Joe Biden and the Democrat Party has been overtaken by the radical left, Pence said. So given their promises of higher taxes, open borders, socialized medicine, and abortion on demand, it's no surprise he chose Senator Harris. President Trump's campaign has already made several attacks on Harris and dubbed her as a phony. In a news briefing on Tuesday, Trump referred to Harris as quote-unquote nasty and quote-unquote disrespectful, as well as saying she was the most liberal lawmaker in Congress. Biden said he chose Harris because of her record of accomplishment and noted their shared relationship with his late son, Beau Biden. Harris said on Twitter she was honored to join Biden, heading into 2020, saying he's someone who can unify the country. I don't quite know all that much about unifying the country, or if she's able to do that, specifically because of the fact that it is California, and California has been known to be a little bit on the radical side, but it'll be interesting to see just what comes out of the debate on October 7th in Salt Lake City. Vice President Pence is looking forward to it, and it should be very interesting. I will be making my prediction on the election around late October, early November, probably here, who knows, but we shall definitely find out. It seems like people on both the right and the left are saying that Kamala Harris is trouble. This from caffeinatedthoughts.com and Shane Vanderhart. He writes, Vanderhart, Kamala Harris as Biden's running mate troubles the left and the right. I'm not surprised that former Vice President Joe Biden's pick of Senator Kamala Harris, Democrat California, as his running mate. He promised a woman, in terms of name recognition due to her failed presidential campaign, she's better known than some of his other prospective choices. The fact that she is a black woman, also from Indian descent, gives the ticket a quote-unquote historical first element. At 55, she's considerably younger than him. Harris also has the uncanny ability to alienate voters on both the right and the left. She reduces the First Amendment's protection of our freedom of religion to freedom of worship, introducing the Do Not Harm Act that guts the Religious Freedom Restoration Act. Harris said, "The freedom to worship is one of our nation's most fundamental rights. That First Amendment guarantee should never be used to undermine other American civil rights or subject them to discrimination on the basis of race, gender, sexual orientation, or gender identity." She has an anti-Catholic bias. Harris expressed concern over Brian C. Busher's membership in the Knights of Columbus, a Catholic service organization. Busher is an Omaha-based lawyer who was nominated by President Donald Trump to sit on the United States District Court for the District of Nebraska. In her questions to the nominee, Senator Harris described the Knights as an all-male society and asked if Busher was aware that the Knights of Columbus opposed a woman's right to choose and work against marriage equality when he joined, Catholic News Agency reported. She appears all too willing to adopt a religious text for judicial nominees, where membership in a mainstream Catholic organization like the Knights of Columbus can disqualify a nominee. That is extreme. Harris expressed her authoritarian bent over guns, saying she would issue an executive order to achieve gun control. If by my 100th day when elected President of the United States, if the United States Congress fails to put it on my desk to sign with all of the good ideas, or any of the good ideas, then I'm prepared to take executive action because that is what is needed, Harris told CNN's Jake Tapper. Specifically, anyone who sells more than 5 guns a year will be required to perform background checks on the people that they sell them to, Harris added, and this will be the most comprehensive background check policy that has ever been had in our country thus far. Harris also promised to direct the ATF to revoke the licenses of gun owners who failed to obey her edict. She doubled down on that during a presidential debate. Harris also co-sponsored Bernie Sanders' Medicare for All plan, a plan that would cost taxpayers $32 trillion. She also wanted to eliminate private health insurance, even if people liked their plan. Harris also wants to ban hate speech from social media. We will hold social media platforms accountable for the hate infiltrating their platforms because they have a responsibility to fight against this threat to our democracy, Harris said during NAACP's Fight for Freedom Fund dinner in Detroit in May of 2019, according to The Observer. Her tough on crime approach troubles the left. Harris's presidential campaign was essentially over when she was clobbered by U.S. Representative Tulsi Gabbard, Democrat Hawaii, on her record as a prosecutor during a debate last summer. Previously seeing a rise, her poll numbers tanked after that. Now Senator Harris, she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are many examples to cite, but she did put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations, and then left about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana, Gabbard stated. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California, and she fought to keep the cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way, she added. Harris couldn't refute Gabbard's claim about blocking evidence in a death row case because it was true, as the Sacramento Bee reported in their fact check of the claim. Harris also could not refute opposing the repeal of cash bail because as a prosecutor she supported raising it. As Attorney General of California, her lawyers argued against the release of prisoners to have cheap labor, extending 2-for-1 credits to all minimum custody inmates at this time would severely impact fire camp participation, a dangerous outcome while California is in the middle of a difficult fire season and severe drought. Lawyers from Harris's office wrote in a filing reported by the Washington Examiner. Elizabeth Nolan Brown of Reason magazine pointed out that she ramped up penalties and prosecution of drug crimes, prostitution, truancy, and other misdemeanor offenses. That is an unusual record for someone who says they champion criminal justice reform. She threatened to jail parents if their student was truant to both school attendants, the Washington Post reported. When she was a San Francisco district attorney, Harris took it upon herself to boost school attendance rates. She did this by threatening to prosecute parents whose kids missed too many school days without good reason. Salvador Rizzo wrote for a fact check at the Washington Post. I believe a child going without an education is tantamount to a crime, so I decided I was going to start prosecuting parents for truancy, Harris said in a 2010 speech. While appearing tough on crime, she wasn't very effective. While she was district attorney in San Francisco, the homicide rates for the city jumped. Also, her conviction rate compared to other California big city district attorneys was subpar. She gave probation to a man who later murdered 2 people. Now, interestingly enough, both the right and the left have concerns where Kamala Harris is concerned as Biden's running mate. One thing that did strike me in the article is the fact that, and I don't know if this was a Freudian slip or what, but it says here, if by my 100th day in office, when elected President of the United States, now I don't know when she may have said this during her own campaign, which if it is, it may not be too much of anything, but I mean, it'll be interesting to see just what happens, especially considering the fact that some people are saying that Joe Biden might just drop out, and in which case Kamala Harris would be president, but if they win. But we'll see. We'll see when that comes up. In other news, we hear that newsrooms are being abandoned as the coronavirus pandemic drags on. This from our good friends at Axios.com, and this by Sarah Fisher. Facing enormous financial pressure and uncertainty around reopenings, media companies are giving up on their years-long building leases for more permanent work-from-home structures. Others are letting employees work remotely for the foreseeable future. Why it matters? Real estate is often the most expensive asset that media companies own, and for companies that don't own their space, and I'm not sharing. And in other news, we have newsrooms that are shuttering and being abandoned as the pandemic rages on. This from Axios.com and Sarah Fisher. Facing enormous financial pressure and uncertainty around reopenings, media companies are giving up on their years-long building leases for more permanent work-from-home structures. Others are letting employees work remotely for the foreseeable future. Why it matters? Real estate is often the most expensive asset that media companies own, and for companies that don't own their space, it's often the biggest expense. Driving the news, the Orlando Sentinel said Wednesday that it is officially leaving its downtown office building after 69 years. The newspaper's publisher and building and general manager blamed the pandemic on the vacancy beginning October 30th, in an email to Sentinel employees. Tribune Publishing also announced Wednesday that it has permanently closed its headquarters in Manhattan for its story tabloid, The Daily News. It's also closing the newsroom of the Capital Gazette in Annapolis, Maryland, which earned national attention in 2015 when a mass shooting occurred at its offices, killing 5. Tribune Publishing is reportedly in talks with Sterling Bay, owner of Chicago's Prudential Plaza, for a buyout of its lease in the iconic building that houses the Chicago Tribune, per the Chicago Tribune. According to a regulatory finding cited by the Tribune, the company has terminated 8 leases since March and hasn't made rent payments at many of its other properties since then. Condé Nast, Home de Vogue, the New Yorker, Vanity Fair, GQ, and others may move its headquarters at One World Trade Center. A spokesperson for its parent company, Advanced Publications, confirmed to the New York Post. The company signed a 35-year lease beginning in 2014, but with the unknowns around the pandemic, it's reportedly looking to downsize from its 21-floor digs in downtown Manhattan. The Miami Herald said in June that it, along with its sister paper, El Nuevo Herald, would be moving out of its office building in Doral that the company occupied for 7 years. For now, they say they'll work remotely through the end of the year before they find a new centralized home. Zoom out. While the financial burdens of owning real estate during the pandemic are great, there's also problems with the structure of many newsrooms not being able to adequately accommodate social distancing. This is especially true given that most newsrooms have open space layouts with shared desk space and few individual offices. Yes, but abandoning a physical presence, especially at the local level, can create credibility issues down the line when a news company needs to lean on community ties to sell local advertising and broker community partnerships. It creates a disconnect as to whether the company is actually engaged in the community, says Bulow, Vice President at Majid. That's going to have an impact on sales. People in town who are trying to sell an authentic connection to local people. That's hard to do without a physical location. Be smart, the idea of not having physical location is not just challenging from a cultural standpoint, but from a workflow and logistics standpoint, says Jaime Spencer, Executive Vice President and Head of Local Media at Majid. Spencer notes that physical spaces like newsrooms that are combined or designed for collaboration are ideal for journalists to ideate and collaborate. While many journalists, especially newspapers, don't need to work in a newsroom to get the job done, a recent Majid survey finds that most newspaper employees would still like to eventually go back to having the option to work in a newsroom and engage with their colleagues. The bottom line, many of the newsrooms being vacated have historic value and have come to represent the foundation of democracy in America. Newspapers have owned very prominent pieces of real estate for a long time, Spencer says. Sometimes they're the crown jewels of skyline, but is it safe from a branding perspective when you don't have that anymore? You know, okay, I pride myself as being a new school reporter with an old school attitude, and basically what this all boils down to is the fact that, like Andrew Breitbart said, the new media is taking over where the old media failed. And it seems that more people are switching to online news rather than the brick and mortar or ink, or in this case ink and paper. So this will be interesting to find out what happens. This is definitely a story that I'm going to be looking at in the near future. As both Republicans and Democrats gear up for their respective conventions coming up, the Democrats starting this Monday and the Republicans next Monday, or the following Monday, there is a bold strategy that's coming to play. This coming from the Washington Examiner. And Trump campaigns follows him into the field while Biden bets on the basement. This by David M. Drucker. President Trump's campaign has redeployed to the field to woo voters in person despite a summer coronavirus surge. As presumptive Democrat candidate or nominee Joe Biden's team wagers that people scarred by the pandemic prefer virtual engagement. On Thursday, Vice President Mike Pence traveled to Iowa, a swing state where Trump and Biden are running even. On Sunday, senior Trump campaign official Mercedes Schlapp is the headline of Women for Trump bus tour event in Wisconsin, another battleground where the president trails. These stops account for just 2 of the more than half dozen in-person visits to key states organized by the Trump campaign this past week. This direct contact with voters, an approach that has included a return to in-person door knocking and peer-to-peer advocacy by Republican field operatives, stands in sharp contrast with the Biden campaign strategy. Even with the addition of running mate Kamala Harris, a California senator, the former vice president is sticking with the robust virtual voter turnout operation he adopted in March when the coronavirus halted traditional in-person campaigning. The Trump-Pence ticket is leading by example, showing Americans they can safely and securely reopen. Trump campaign spokesman Ken Farnaso said, Biden and Harris continue to fearmonger behind closed doors. It's not controversial to say the American voters deserve to connect with both campaigns as they try to win their support. Buoyed by Biden's substantial lead in national polls and a semi-long advantage in battleground state surveys, Democrats are embracing the comparison. Confident Biden's resistance to in-person campaigning is a political asset, voters are dissatisfied with Trump's management of the coronavirus, and Democrat officials say Biden's commitment to contactless campaigning and decision to keep his ground troops on a virtual footing reassures voters that Biden is serious about defeating the pandemic. Sending a masked organizer to knock on a stranger's door in the middle of a raging pandemic is not an effective or safe use of the coordinated campaign's resources, said David Bergstein, a spokesperson for the Democratic National Committee. The DNC is partnering with the Biden campaign to identify and turn out voters through a mixture of telephone calls and text messaging tactics the Trump campaign and Republican National Committee continue to embrace in states where the rate of coronavirus infections makes traditional campaign or traditional engagement with voters in the field impractical. Last week, the Trump campaign contacted more than 3 million voters by telephone and targeted an additional 1 million voters via live door knocks. But this week, the Trump campaign deployed multiple bus tours with prominent supporters to the president to Florida, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Wisconsin, with Nevada on tap. Meanwhile, the Trump campaign said field offices catering to minorities are opening, most recently bureaus targeting black voters in Cleveland and Tallahassee, Florida, after delays caused by the coronavirus lockdown. The president's team plans 15 field offices dedicated to black people, 16 voted on Hispanics, and 7 on Asian Pacific Islanders. The campaign says it has spent more than $100,000 on personal protective equipment and office cleaning, and provided staff with a booklet detailing government health guidelines. Biden and Harris are sticking close to the former vice president's home in Wilmington, Delaware, as has been the presumptive nominee's practice since the coronavirus hit the United States in late winter. The campaign, which in conjunction with the DNC has contacted as many as 3.5 million voters a week via telephone and text messaging, boasts a virtual field staff that it claims will reach 2,000 by month's end. It hosts events targeting critical battlegrounds and important voting blocks on a daily basis. On Thursday, the Biden campaign hosted what it billed as a quote-unquote Texas roundtable to discuss the reopening of Texas schools and the mismanagement of the COVID-19 crisis at the federal and state levels. On Friday, the campaign is hosting separate video conference roundtables to discuss issues of concern to rural voters and the need for more broadband access in tribal territories. As is said in the movie Dodgeball, here we go.
So bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off.
Yes, it'll be interesting to see just who it pays off for, whether it be the Democrats or the Republicans. We shall find out in approximately 81 more days, November 3rd, when the election rolls around. And that's going to do it for the news for this week. I am Mick Bulow. Again, if you like what you watch, please go ahead and hit the thumbs up button. Also subscribe and tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell an enemy or two even. And I will be back next week. Until next time, peace.